Ever since I started doing Famous Aquarius, you guys have been asking me to do a rapper. And I'm not really into rappers. A little something, something, a little something, something, not much. The other day, one of my buddies on Instagram, Sandy, actually sent me 25 Aquarius rappers, which I gotta read. But this one I'm gonna do today is a rapper from the United States that a lot of you mentioned to me. I never even heard of this person. That's why I needed a couple more, a day more to research, because I had never heard of him. I knew nothing of him. I stopped following rappers in like the 90s. The only rappers I know right now that are current is Cardi B, Meg Thee Stallion, and Remy Ma. And I haven't even heard Remy Ma on a track in a while. I've seen her on Instagram though. But Meg and Cardi are the only ones I really, see their music, see them popular and around and online. There's probably other great ones that I just don't pay no attention to. I'm not really I never was a big rap person. Rap wasn't allowed in my house. My mother did not allow rap music in our house when I was growing up. It wasn't a rap song played in the house until I was like a teenager, my mom decided to give rap music a chance, so she bought a couple of tapes, and she didn't like it, and she ended up giving them to me. So that's how I got a couple of rap tapes, and it was like, Will Smith, it was a Fresh Prince, some of that kind of stuff, and that was okay. I like that, but I'm not a rap person. So this gentleman, his name is XXXTentacion. I think that's how you say that. I'm gonna call him X. And that sounds like something an Aquarius would make up, okay? So he is today's infamous Aquarius. So I'm gonna tell you about him because this story is kind of screwed up. So I'm gonna tell you about him, and we're gonna chit chat, and you guys can let me know in the comment section, did you know about X and what did you think? I didn't listen to his music. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I just couldn't. And people were like, it's not that bad. I'm just like, Rap music really gives me a headache sometimes. Certain ones, not all of it, because some of it I like. I like older rap, actually. But even then, the vibration often gives me a headache. So let me do the introduction, and I want to tell you about this young man because this is a very interesting story. So I'm Queen said Haru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, pass it on to somebody else who might like it too, and please drop us a positive comment in the comment section, and stick around to the end of the video because I am going to read 2 of my favorite positive comments from previous videos, and one of them might actually be yours. If you want to get a reading done, please email me. If you want to hit me up on social media, or if you want to be one of my patrons on Patreon, all those links and information is underneath this video. All right, so let's talk about this gentleman. All right, so his birth name was Jose Dwayne Ricardo Onfroy. X was born January 23rd, 1998, and he died June 18th of 2018. So this young man only lived 20 years. He was only 20 years old when he passed over. And when I first saw that, I was like, you know what? When I was younger, I noticed that a lot of Aquarius, especially myself, had a tendency to be rebellious, reckless, sometimes even self-destructive. Before I had my daughter, I was fearless back then, man. I was fearless as a young girl. I wasn't afraid to die. It didn't mean shit to me. At that time, it didn't mean anything. It was no stakes. If I died, I died. I really didn't care at like 15, 16 years old. It was no big deal. Even younger than that, it was no big deal to me. So I was fearless. I would go anywhere, do anything. I remember hitchhiking, joyriding. I did all kind of stuff that could have got me killed. And I never even bat an eyelash about it. But then when I gave birth at 17, I was like, oh snap, I gotta be alive to take care of this baby. And I became a lot more cautious. Like what I was willing to do and where I was willing to go and stuff like that, I became a lot more cautious. And then as I got older and got into spirituality and self-love, I became even more cautious because then I really wanted to live. My life was going good and I wanted to live and I wanted to do stuff and I wanted to create and stuff like that. So I started to feel good. Now I want to be alive, you know? So it was quite the journey. So I can think back to being young. He died at 20. So he probably was just as reckless, and it says that he was reckless from like 6 years old, according to the reports, you know? So him dying at 20 is extremely tragic, but for a reckless Aquarius, it doesn't surprise me. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine. I was like 17. This is before my daughter was born. And I remember, I didn't even know I was pregnant. I was already pregnant, but I didn't know. And me and my friend were talking about life, and she said something to me about getting old. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to live that long. And she was like, what makes you say that? And I was like, I don't think I'm going to get to 25. Now, mind you, I'm 43 now. And at that time, I didn't think I'd make 25 because I knew that I was living dangerously. I knew it. And I was just like, you know, to me, you know, there's this old song and it says, life ain't all that unless you're doing it right. So to me, life wasn't all that because I wasn't doing it right. All right, so let's talk about him. So he died at 20 years old. I told you guys that he was a rapper. He was a singer and a songwriter as well. So he's multi-talented. Now, this young man, this young Aquarius, at 6 years old, 6 years old, a man attacked his mother. And he tried to kill this man. Now, mind you, I can understand that because if somebody attacks my loved one, I'm definitely going to go into attack mode. I was just surprised he was so young, you know? Usually at 6 years old, you know, you don't get involved with grown folks' business. But somebody attacked his mom and he raised right up. So we see here immediately this fierceness, and that fierceness is a very strong, aggressive Aquarian trait. A lot of us are known for having bad tempers too, so that could have been something. I had a bad temper. My mom said since I was born. She said I was born with a bad temper. So he might have been born with his too. At 10 years old, unfortunately, his father was arrested. Now, for a boy or for a child, period, to have your parent get arrested is really traumatic. And for you to be a boy child and it to be your dad means you now have no male role model. And I don't know if he had even a relationship with his father because it said that his father was in jail for 9 years. So he was 10, so that means he was 19 when his dad got out. So all his formative years had passed. And his dad was then deported to Jamaica because his mother and father were both originally from Jamaica. So he got deported back. So that means that not only was he gone for his formative years, but now he's also gone, period. He's on a whole different, you know, a whole different part of the world, unfortunately. And I don't know if he ever even was able to reconcile before he passed over. So after this happens, he joined a choir. Apparently his musical talent was starting to, you know, be apparent to him, but he got kicked out of the choir for his behavior. So we see here a lot of that with Aquarius, that behavior problem. I cannot tell you how much trouble I got into. I got suspended. I got conduct referrals. I got into a lot of trouble when I was a young lady. And we talking about kindergarten to 8th grade. Lots of trouble, lots of fights, lots of stuff like that. So he had that same issue and got kicked out of choir. Now, I didn't get kicked out of Catholic school, but I had one more chance and they were going to put me out. They was done with me. And they were like, look here, you better graduate quick. Okay. And luckily for me, I did. I didn't get into any more trouble when I graduated. But it was quite the struggle. Okay. Then he actually got kicked out of middle school altogether. Now, anybody out there that got kicked out of middle school, or you know somebody got kicked out of middle school, you got to really be getting into some stuff. And it says here it was all over fighting. So again, we see this bad temper, you know, from day one. And he got kicked out of middle school. Then he ended up going some kind of way. It didn't tell me like what the bridge was here, because I'm like, if you got kicked out of middle school, what did you then do? I'm assuming he must have found another school, because it says he ended up going to high school and got, let me see, no, in high school in 10th grade, he dropped out. So he got kicked out of middle school, dropped out of high school, okay? And I, too, dropped out of high school. I dropped out of high school in 12th grade. I was pregnant and exhausted, and I dropped out of high school in 12th grade and got a GED after my daughter was born. And then after I got my GED, I went to college, community college. And then I went to Temple University and got my other 2 degrees. So I was able to get back on track. And it seems like he was trying to do the same thing towards the end of his life. But let me continue a little bit more. So 10th grade, he drops out of high school. During that time, he made it very clear that he was suffering from depression, insecurities, and behavior problems. This is what he felt about himself. Okay, so this is when the arrests started. So you fighting, you getting kicked out of stuff, now you're getting arrested. And apparently during the time that he is rapping, he's also getting arrested. So this is happening simultaneously. And we've seen this behavior with a lot of rappers, criminal behaviors, or being accused of criminal behaviors that they may or might not have done. The other day I heard Lil Wayne had a gun charge, I should say, for having a gun in his private plane or something like that. Other ones have been shot. Meek Mill ended up in and out of trouble too with, you know, with the law. And it's a very common theme with rappers. Even some of the rappers who never got in trouble will pretend that they got in trouble because they thought it would sell albums. But this guy, X, is the real thing. It said that he was arrested repeatedly throughout this time. So from the time of dropping out in 10th grade all the way to his death about 10 years later, he repeatedly got arrested. His rap sheet included drugs, theft, assault, aggravated battery, witness tampering, possession of firearms, and domestic violence. One of his girlfriends who was pregnant, it said he assaulted her. So I don't know to what extent, how bad it was, but he assaulted her. And then they said that he then threatened her and she refused to even go forward with the trial. So he had a lot of like bad stuff going on. And at the same time trying to, you know, do music. And while he was in jail, he was still doing the same thing, trying to do music, and meets a musician. And him and the musician, I'm thinking to myself when I read it, okay, they're going to start a band, right? They're going to start a band. They're going to start, you know, going to concerts. They started robbing houses. So him and this musician started robbing houses together. And I'm just like, so they had a mutual love of music, but instead of just going for the music, they started doing crimes together, and maybe a little bit of music too, because in 2014, he uploaded his first song. Okay, so he finally got a song going on. After that, he started a YouTube channel, you know, doing his little music and his YouTube thing. And it said that he was doing shows, he was doing tours. But the problem was that while he was doing these tours, there was violence, there was fights, there was recklessness. They said that he would attack people would attack him. He hit somebody with a microphone. You know, how are you at your show beating up people? They trying to beat you up. So his shows were very reckless and they were violent, according to, you know, what Google was telling me. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to one of his shows. Please tell me, what did you think of it? Now, from what I understand, some of his shows were better than others as far as the violence was concerned, but it said it happened a lot. Eventually, he was labeled rap's most controversial man. So there's a lot of controversy going around because people are looking at all of the awful, violent things that he's doing, but then they're saying that his music was actually pretty good. I heard that he was actually talented. So that's not unusual for an Aquarius either. Aquarius are usually very creative, and we make a lot of stuff up. We just come up with things. We dream things sometimes. Aquarius are really good with that. So rap's most controversial man got a record deal for $6 million with a record company that was under Capitol Records. So homeboy, was making that money. He was, reaching for the stars, baby, And then they said that he was murdered. Very shortly after that, he was murdered at a motorcycle shop. Apparently, he was shopping for motorcycles. He had $50,000 on him, and some men ran up on him and killed him. I wasn't able to find out if this was retaliation or if it was, just unprovoked or what the case was, but they basically cornered him and they killed him and then robbed him for the $50,000 that he had, I guess, to buy a motorcycle. So that is the life of X. So what do I think about this? I think this is an awful, awful situation. This poor infamous Aquarius. There's a lot of stuff here. One thing that trips me out personally about Aquarius, especially the ones that are violent. Griselda Blanco was very violent. He was extremely violent. And I've read about other ones that were violent. What trips me out about them is that 9 times out of 10, they try to turn their lives around. I don't know about Griselda Blanco if she tried to really turn her life around, but I know that many of us do, including myself. Now, the one tie-in I get with Griselda, the reason why I brought her up, is because I also noticed that with violent Aquarius, there's usually a lot of pain. And I think this is probably true of most people. The saying, hurt people hurt people? It doesn't excuse it or make it okay, but it is something that happens a lot. A lot of hurt people lash out at other people. A lot of them are miserable, and it's not fair. It's not an excuse, because they really need to handle why they're miserable and get themselves together before messing with the rest of us. But it is the reason why some of them are so violent, because they're hurt. They're, whatever has happened to them. So here we got this young guy growing up without his father. It sounded like his mother was present but not very active. So that situation, that's what they said in his biography. I'm not sure if he would feel exactly the same way, but that's what they said about it. So he had this really hard, difficult childhood, and all this temper and anger problems, behavior problems. What do you expect? Like, for him to grow up and start getting arrested and then end up dead does not surprise me. Now, some people go through that and they don't go down that path. They go a totally different way. I met a pastor one time, and he had a very similar story to this young man. And when he got to be in his teens, he was taken to a Christian camp. He really enjoyed it and ended up becoming a pastor. So all of the trouble he was getting in stopped when he became interested in, spirituality at this church. So it is people that go in another direction, but it doesn't surprise me at all if they don't. And then I was telling you guys that the last thing I saw was that he actually, according to reports from those that actually know him, said that he was trying to get himself together. That towards the end of his life, he figured out that the way he was living was not the way he wanted to live. And I totally get that. I totally get that. That's the same thing that happened to me. It's the same thing that happened to a lot of people. They saw what their life was and was like, I think I can do better than this. And he had gotten to that point. He just didn't live long enough to actually bring it to fruition. Some people think this is tragic. His life, his story is tragic. Some people are angry that he died before he had a chance to really face his punishments for all the things that he did to other people. I read a little bit about that too. Some people were like, really angry about that. Like, look at all the stuff he did, And I'm just like, but that's karma. That's karma. I honestly believe that nobody gets away with anything. You're gonna have to clean up that karma one way or another, in one life or another. So in our belief, he'll be back to clean up that karma. But it is a very sad story, and I'm sorry that it ended that way. I'm sorry because music could have saved his life. If he had just thrown himself into the music versus into the violence and the trouble, it could have been a different story. But such is life, and hopefully if he does come back, he'll be able to clean that karma up and do better. So that's him, XXXTentacion. I wonder what that means. I googled it and they didn't give me a meaning for it. So if anybody knows what his name means, like what did he say that meant? Because Aquarius, like I said, make a lot of stuff up. So I'm assuming he made it up from something that meant something to him. So that's our infamous Aquarius. May he rest in peace. All right, so we're going to talk about some positive comments. I got one from Juju. Juju said, I'm a Leo rising and Cancer sun. Okay. And Aquarius, Sagittarius moon. Okay. And I love Aquarius. It's my descendant in Aquarius, I guess. Well, also you're a Leo rising and you're a Sagittarius moon. Those get along very well with Aquarius. Cancer is more of a challenge, but a lot of, with those other placements, that could actually work actually. So yeah, that's an interesting combination. You have the Leo fire, the Sagittarius fire, and the Cancer water. And it's interesting because I really do wonder, Juju, let us know in the comments section, how do you balance the fire and the water? That's an interesting elemental combination because water puts out fire, and fire boils water. So I wonder how you manage to do that. That's interesting. The second one is from Soul Her System Divine 23. And she says, unfortunately, I wish I could have met my Aquarius when we both were single. I would have had the full experience of his heart. Been 6 years. There's still love there, but it's over. Yeah, I would never mess with anybody ever again that was in a relationship with somebody else. That was the most trifling shit I've ever done. It really was. And I did it more than once. So I can tell you, it was trifling. And I would never do that again. Never do it to myself or to another person. Not only are you harming the other person, the one that's being cheated on with you, but you're also harming yourself. Self-esteem wise, every woman I know, and I never asked guys about this before, but a lot of women that I know, we've talked about being the other woman, and it's a very degrading kind of energy, and you don't always feel that. Like the one girl was telling me, she was like, oh, I'm just having fun, but towards the end of that relationship, she came back to me and was like, I'm like, because once you start to feel something for that person, you start to feel like shit. A lot of people do anyway. Anybody with a conscience, start to think about what you're doing, and it's awful. So yeah, I would never mess with anybody if we both were not single. You got to come to the table with a clean slate if you want to play the game. You can't come up here talking about, oh, I got somebody, but I'm in a place right now where the men, they have this thing, the Costa Rican men have this thing where they call it going on an adventure. Which I'm like, what? So my friend was saying to me that when you go on an adventure, it means you have a woman, but you go on an adventure, a sexual escapade with another woman. And I was like, that is no kind of adventure for me. I'm good. All right, guys, it's time for us to get going. So come back soon because I got a lot more to say. See you later.